What's going on, everybody? Today's quick mini lesson is on ecological succession, which is really just changes in ecosystems over time. So the definition is a gradual replacement of one plant community by another through natural processes over time. When we talk about ecological succession, there's a few major types, but there's two that we focus on, primary succession and secondary succession. So let's start with primary succession. So with primary succession, there essentially was really no full community there before. You're essentially starting with a bare rock surface. Bare rock surface, the foundation of any ecosystems are usually producers. So plants are typically the foundation of terrestrial ecosystems. But if there's no soil, right, there can be no plant growth. So the start of primary succession starts with the formation of soils, which I'll talk about in a second. So what initiates this process of primary succession is really, one of kind of two things. One are volcanic explosions or eruptions. Now, this just can't be a small eruption that kind of spews ash. It needs to be an eruption that releases a large amount of magma that's going to form a new rock surface. The other major type are retreating glaciers. So if you kind of look, at the North or South Pole, where you have a lot of climate change, you have a lot of glaciers melting away. When it melts away, you're going to have a bare rock surface that's left behind. The key player with this primary succession are these organisms known as lichens. They're a pioneer species. They're actually a weird little organism. They're like it's a symbiotic organism. It's actually a combination of a fungus and an algae. But the cool thing about them is they're unique to survive in a new primary succession environment. They are algae, so therefore they're photosynthetic, so they can produce their own food through photosynthesis, which is needed because there's no real food source on bare rocks. The second thing is they're decomposers. Before I go any further with them and what they do, we need to understand just a quick difference between like sand and soil, right? As rocks erode, they just produce smaller rock fragments, which is basically sand. Like, things don't grow well in sand. What organisms or plants need to grow is they need soil. And what soil is, it's a combination of that sand plus a whole bunch of organic nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, right? You think of nice growing soil when you're planting a tree or a potted plant in your house. It's that deep, dark soil that has a lot of nutrients in it. And that's what lichens do. So over time, the rocks erode, the lichens live, they die, they decompose themselves, right? And the lichens themselves begin to kind of form the nutrient layers that go into the formation of the soil. So over years and years and years, could be hundreds of years, thousands of years, right? The lichens can form this soil base. And once you have the soil base, it's pretty easy for the rest of the succession process to take place. Once we have soil, right, in the air, pollen, seeds, right? You think of like a dandelion, those little fluffy things that can get blown in the air, right? They get blown in, they land on the ground, and you start getting a formation of grasses. And then typically how it works is you get small grasses, taller grasses, small shrubs, tall shrubs, small trees, larger trees. And then you get the transition. Typically, if you're in our area, you'll get a transition from usually pine trees into more deciduous trees, which are like oak trees, maple trees, trees that lose their leaves. And that's primary succession. It just basically starts with a bare rock surface. You need these lichens to kind of come and play. Moss as well can play a role there. And the progression goes until you get this kind of apex or climax community, which we'll talk about at the end of this. Secondary succession is, so here's primary succession again. So just kind of here's your bare rock surface. Right, lichens get blown in, spores get blown in on the winds over hundreds of years, or at least 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They start to kind of erode the rocks. They die, they decompose, they start to form the soil base. You get some mosses, some smaller weeds and grasses, some herbs, and you get the formation all the way into kind of what would be the climax community with a lot of deciduous trees as well. Okay. Secondary succession is really easy. If you understand primary, secondary is easy. Secondary, there was a community there before. So you are starting with a soil-based surface. So common, you can think about types of disturbances for this. So like a forest fire would be a great example of something that could initiate secondary succession. And in this process, there is this soil base already. So the lichens, although they could be around, right, they're not really the pioneer species in this situation. Your pioneer species are going to be mosses or grasses, small plants, and you're basically just going to kind of start from that progression. You have the grasses, small plants, larger, taller grasses, larger shrubs and plants, right? And then you get trees, a lot of coniferous trees, and then transition into more deciduous trees in that climax community. So secondary succession, some good examples. I kind of mentioned forest fires, definitely key one. Hurricanes. A hurricane wipes out a whole shoreline. That could definitely play a role there. Harvesting, so farming really can play a role with this. If I have a farm that I've been farming for a long time, and then I walk away from it, you have this soil-based surface where the secondary succession could take place. Secondary succession, many species are adapted to it, right? So, if you think about the Midwest, succession's happening all the time. There's like this natural cycle that takes place. Forest fires happen. They happen through lightning strikes, and many types of forests are actually designed to have forest fires, burn them down, so then kind of restart their cycle again. So it's very common to kind of see a cycle with this. Another thing you can kind of see is looking at this succession process, you can kind of see it kind of transitioning from a shoreline. Like you have this nice shoreline with sandy surface, not many nutrients kind of in that surface. But as you get further and further away from the shoreline, especially thinking kind of like the ocean shoreline, right, you can kind of see the progression as you move further away, which is kind of cool. Like I see this when I drive to Cape Cod when I used to live in Massachusetts. Right, as you get closer and closer and closer, you'd see more and more kind of shorter, more coniferous trees instead of your larger maples. Not that maples and oaks weren't around, but you can kind of see this kind of transition there. So again, we said that this is a natural transition for many ecosystems, right? The natural transition of having a forest fire to kind of restart the growth of this secondary succession process. Around us, you don't really see it too much, right? We're basically kind of standing in what we consider a climax community or a climax forest, where we're really just kind of maintaining what's there, right? Year after year, our forest basically looks the same for the most part. So again, our communities around here, right, we don't have a ton of forest fires. Right? We have so much moisture in our environment that we don't have forest fires that burn down our forest typically. So we're kind of really just maintaining a climax community. Right, it's just a stable community that's basically just maintaining what it is at this point. And that's it. Thank you for listening today, and hope you learned something. Talk to you soon. Bye.